Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Well, let me make sure the microphones are on.
Yes, sir.
Yes, loud and
Okay.
clear.
I am so sorry for joining late. We had our CS5 conference and I was lost in retrospective just moments ago. And one of you just called me. I think it was Brian. There are six of you on the call. Thank you so much for calling me. I totally screwed up and I'm completely embarrassed right now, but here I am. And I'll try to talk really fast so that we don't lose any of your time. And I'm sorry, I would never take for granted the time that you all dedicate to this. So I apologize, but here I am. Um, so let me get things going for everybody right now. Um, Hang on, I'm just going to get it up on my screen. I wanted to join before I even had it up on my screen. And we'll do this training one session. And if anybody wants to stay late because it runs over, we'll go when you guys are tired of me. Everybody should be unmuted or have the ability to unmute yourselves. And I am going to log in and we'll do the training one session. Sound okay for everyone?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so let me get my screen share going. And we will log in. So if you're on this session, most likely you recently got FutureFeed or you recently started working. And one of the things when I do the trainings is I love it when people interrupt me because there are a lot of features in here and there's a lot of context and you will, I promise, forget if you don't sort of jump in. So please feel free to jump in. As soon as I can get myself logged in, we'll get started. Okay, it should be logged in a moment. So one of the things that we do, and you will see on occasion, we try not to bug people on the way in, is you'll see that there's a message here on October 20th. We upgraded, there was an AWS service disruption. I'm sure you all read about it. So you can see the last time we put pop notice up was June 18th. We try not to bother people when you're on the way to getting your work done, but we will let you know when something good, because we're constantly developing new features, happens, or if there's a disruption. And the AWS thing was terrible. It affected parts of our application were in the Gov Cloud, but the editor that is embedded in our software had a dependency on the commercial cloud, so it even affected us. So let's start at the very beginning. And let's start with kind of the goal. The goal is, if you came here for compliance, there are a couple of approaches to compliance. One approach would be to take all of the controls and for us to make a form, and you just go through the controls and you describe what your company is doing for those controls, and you describe it in a way that refers to some evidence or something, and the auditor can come in and review that and pass judgment on you. We operate a little bit differently. What we do is we have you collect three lists: a list of your people, a list of the tools and services that you have in IT, and a list of the documents that tell the people what to do with the tools and services. And it's our contention, and it's been holding up, we've been doing this for 5 years, that every control, the evidence for those controls that you're doing the right thing is just a combination of some group of the people, tools, and documents. And if you can just define which ones that the auditor or the assessor needs to look at, then you can have a very efficient auditing process. And in fact, I think the record right now with FutureFeed is 7 hours and 52 minutes start to finish with a DIPCAC assessment.
Wow, that's quick.
Yes, it can be fast, but it's really a matter of staying organized. Like for everybody on this call, like at the end of the day, you probably know your IT and you know all this stuff, but you got to be able to prove it, and you got to be able to prove it like at the snap of a finger when you have a bunch of strangers that are asking questions, some of which are well-founded and others which are not so well-founded, because there's a difference from one inspector to the next. So I'm going to walk you through this afternoon on how to navigate the foundation for doing the assessment, and then you come back for training 2, and then you'll use that foundation. I would encourage you to not do training 2 like tomorrow. Go build in each organization your lists out, then come back for training 2, and that's where you're going to learn how to use those lists to go through the assessment. So let's dive in. This first screen, if you're a partner user, or a service provider, you're probably not on this call, but the service providers can see all of the different companies that they help. And if you're with a really large company, you might be looking at multiple enclaves within your company. So that's all that screen was. I wish I could make the Zoom window go away for me. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, there we go. So the first screen is just one of 4 dashboards we offer. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the dashboards, but this lets any user who logs in, this is your main compliance dashboard, see how much is green and how much is red. When you're starting out, everything's going to be sort of this blue, not assessed. It'll be kind of blank. And then over time, as you go through the assessment, it gets more green. Your goal is to get to 110, whatever your score is. We all have the same goal. This tells you the current score, and you can predict the day that you're going to get there by the last poem that has an assigned due date is the day that all the poems are done. Therefore, you're done. So I know that this one's going to be done October 9th, 2026, because somewhere in the system, there's a poem where somebody assigned a date of October 9th. So that means that we're done. And I think you'll find a lot of what we do here is meant to be super simple to follow. If I want to explore one of the areas here, so again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the dashboards, but I can click on that, or I could click on the same one in here. So if I click on media protection, let me click on it down here. It didn't seem to be responding. I can dive into the controls within media protection, and this one looks like it needs some help. So I can click onto that. And I can see I've got one objective met, one not met, and I can then open it in the more detailed sections where I can sort of change the answers. So this gives you a nice navigation point. There are a couple of other navigations points that you can have. This is the prep center. Did I hear somebody asking a question?
Nope.
No question. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. So for all the parts of our application, they're all listed here. You can assign a status and you can put a person in charge of it. So rather than being in charge of part of the compliance, we realized that our software, even though the navigation looks very simple up here, there's like a lot of pages in our software. So one way that you can do it, and I know some of you will likely be a one man or woman shop, but if you have a few team members, you can say, Tony, you're in charge of this team, this page. Larry, you're in charge of this page. And then you can start to divide up the work. And I think a lot of people find that very helpful. There is a critical dates page. I would ignore that at this early stage, but it's as you can set overall, like the date that you got something done and keep a copy of it. Statuses, we're actually improving that feature in the future. Team responsibilities is about who does what on your team. So we use the RACI model here. Does anybody on the call know what RACI stands for and what it's all about? RACI, RACI. So I have a 7-second rule when I ask questions like that.
Yeah,
Nobody,
no.
7 seconds, they jump right in. So RACI it's a very mature management model that doesn't just apply to technology. R stands for responsible, A for accountable, C for consulted, and I for informed. So think about what we're trying to do here. We're capturing everything in IT for an auditor. The auditor needs to know who to talk to. I got music. Okay. Anyway, the person that most auditors will want to talk to is who's in charge. That's the accountable person. The thing that's special about accountability is there can only be one person accountable for a thing. If two people are going grocery shopping, at the end of the day, if both people are in charge, one's going to go down one aisle and one's going to go down another aisle, and both will think that the other person got the chicken and nobody got the chicken. So in anything in management, it's always a great idea to have one person accountable. If you define that one accountable person for the assessor, then the assessor knows who to talk to, and they won't waste your time and money talking to a bunch of people trying to figure out who has the answer. Responsible people can be a group or a team of people who report to an accountable person. So responsible as a group, accountable as a single person. Consulted, C, are people who are not directly in line with getting something done, but they can be consulted. Maybe it's a person who used to be in the job who has lots of knowledge. And so you want to say that they're available to the team. And I are the people who should be informed when anything changes. If you're working in a bank and you change something about the bank teller stations, the I are all the bank tellers, so you can tell them what changed. So this is a really important part. A CMMC assessment is really three things: interview, examine, and test. When we define most particularly the A's and the R's, we are saying we can tell the assessor for this control or this objective, this is who you talk to first, the A, and these are other people that would be knowledgeable and not a waste of your time to talk to them. Does that make sense to everybody on this call?
Yeah, thanks for running through that.
Yes.
Okay. I would encourage you to use that model in all of your management life. It's not just useful in this case. Tasks. We're going to talk about tasks for just a second to give you the high level. Tasks are things that you need to produce in terms of evidence. So if you identify that you need a user list, you create a task to go get that user list and associate it with, say, the access policy. So a task is getting evidence, and you might create deeper in the software. I'll show you how you can create a task to get that user list once a month and send a reminder to the person in charge of it. A POAM is a little bit different. A POAM is taking a gap that exists between where your company is now and where you need to be compliant. And then you define it's kind of like a task, but it's a POAM. You define the things that you need to go from non-compliance to compliance. But it's kind of a one-time deal. So let's just say I don't have antivirus and I need to have antivirus, and endpoint security is mentioned in a few of the controls. So my POAM is to go buy some antivirus that meets whatever specifications I have and implement it. And then you're done. You've now moved and you can say that control is compliant. The task may be to review the malware report that comes out of that antivirus once a quarter or once a month. And if it looks like somebody is penetrating your network or something, you have to deal with it and show evidence that you routinely do that. That's the difference between a task and a POAM. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here we have team responsibilities. So I can see my whole team. There are a lot of people in this sample data software. So we'll just look at me. And if I want to see more detail about me, I can look at my POAMs by clicking on me. And I see that my POAMs are embedded into 2 projects. And by the way, I'm the dude that's in charge of both of these projects. I'm the A. So, and if I want to look in a more detailed way at that project, I can look at that project and I can see that the project is currently in the proposed state. It's $12,000. I can go very deep and I see that that POAM has not been completed. And if I want to, I can put some details of how I completed that POAM. And now that POAM is done. If I go back to my main dashboard, I will have moved something forward. So you have individuals and you can look them up. I can look for all the accountable individuals across POAMs, across tasks. I mean, there's all sorts of filtering in here. And I think most of it is easy for you to follow. Those are our dashboards. This is the main dashboard. By the way, if you're in love with this dashboard for some reason, you want this to be how you're greeted every morning, you can set a default view. Any questions about anything that I've shared?
A lot of data.
There's a lot of data. We are literally capturing everything in IT into one place to try to deliver a 1 to 2 day experience where they can evaluate whether you're good enough or not. It's a lot of data. That's why there's a tool. Let me point out a couple more features. If you're not digging this bright white background, you can switch to dark mode. A lot of people do that since we introduced it. There is a getting started on, I think, every page. And the getting started will explain what you're doing here. So say you get to a page and you're like, I have no idea what's going on here. Read what's in here. And in the tabs, you'll find up to 3 or 4 tabs, depending on, like, there's not a lot to say about a dashboard. I'll show you on another screen. there may be 3 or 4 tabs to not only explain what's happening on the screen, but why is it relevant to your compliance? So there is a lot of help that's baked into the cake here. Now I'm going to call your attention to our main navigation. If you want to go back to the dashboards, you click that. And in fact, you can navigate straight to whatever. If I want to see my individual POAM screen, I can click straight there and I see my screen. I can change users if I want and switch to, does anybody else have POAMs? Chase has a POAM in this sample data. So I can switch to Chase's view and I can see what kind of projects and POAMs he has. So anyway, that's the dashboards. This is our main navigation. It should be simple. There's no user manual for FutureFeed because the user manual is, okay, everybody take a breath, get ready for it. Go from left to right. I don't think we need to write that down anywhere. Go from left to right, do everything you can on a page before you do the next page. And that's all you really need to know. So we start at the beginning. Isn't that the Sound of Music's start at the beginning? It's a very good place to start. You start with start. And again, when you get to, this is sort of like the high level. Think of this as the city view. Think of this as the neighborhood view. And think of these smaller tabs here as like the house by house view. Each one gives you more and more context. We're on the start right now. So we're starting. We're not doing people. We're just starting up. Here is my sort of neighborhood view. I'm in the company info area. I'm not doing scope. I'm just defining the company. And then these are the tabs within it. If you want to progress towards compliance, you start at the left. I would start with the first one and I do all of these things. And then I do this one. And then I do this one and this one and this one. And then I go to people. And then I do its circles and its street view. Make sense?
Yep.
Everybody good? Because if you don't know how to navigate, it's not going to be good. Here's the temptation. Over and over again, we see people who skip to assess and they just start answering controls. You are welcome to do that. I will never know if you do that. I'm not even allowed to access your data unless I'm in the middle of a support ticket and I ask permission. It is not the most efficient way to proceed. However, some people are most comfortable going to the controls and starting to answer things. You will back into, over time, if you do it that way, you will start to define your lists of people, tools, and documents. People, tools, and documents. It's just, for me, as the guy who did a lot of the designing of this, it's not the most efficient way to get from beginning to end because you're kind of accidentally defining your list of documents by every time you need a document. You're like, oh yeah, we have this document on the file server and it seems related. Let me add it now, as opposed to like trying to catch all your documents that you have and all that are missing, which become POAMs, and doing it all at once. So that's why we do it that way. So let's start with the start. We're company. Yes.
Can I interrupt real quick? Are you seeing the chat side?
I am
Brian's
not.
asking. Okay.
I'm working on a laptop. I would appreciate if you guys interrupt like you are now. It's not a negative. Just tell me what.
All right, Brian. So Brian is asking a couple questions, and
Go ahead.
I didn't think you saw him.
I'm working off a laptop.
Since I got it in front of me, he's asking, is there a way of tying multiple cage codes to a single organization?
Yes. And we are about to get to that when
Okay.
we get to contracts here. So pause on that question and I will get there in about 4 minutes. I am not going to go through every field in the training. I respect all of you. I'm going to tell you how to use the fields, and you're welcome to interrupt me again and say, I don't understand a field or something. There is another level of help. See these green dots? We call them green dots. We also more formally call it micro training. So the idea is we didn't want to give you a cluttered interface. Once you know what a unique entity identifier is, then you don't need to have all those words in your face all the time. Like, you know that it's your SAM database. Like, there's a unique, there's actually a new code that we're adding from CMMC. So use these green dots. Some of them, these don't have it, but some will have a video. They'll have lengthier explanations in there. They're very useful. Just fill out the form, right? You're not doing yourself a favor by moving ahead and then trying to remember to go back to the form. Remember I said about the getting started? So this is assigned, here's the getting started help. And you have 4 things. Bottom line up front, what is it about? The details that matter. This is all the details of why we're collecting all the information, compliance implications, and if there's any special notes for the assessor, like how the assessor will use it, it's all in there. So sometimes our smaller features like a green dot here or getting started doesn't belie how much information is behind it. If you are going to assign pages and you don't have to, you can assign Tony to be in charge of this page. If she says, I'm done with the page and I come in and I review it, we can track that I reviewed it. And if it's the day before the assessment and you want to kind of go through all of them and make sure that everything is done satisfactorily, ready for the assessor, then I can mark it as approved. So you can kind of track the work, basically according to the layout. I will call attention down here at the bottom. You all are getting started on your assessments, presumably because you're on a training 1. This risk appetite thing is really healthy for an organization to do. You're going to have lots of chances to spend money on compliance and cybersecurity. One thing that helps organizations is if you all agree at the beginning, like you and your bosses, unless you are the boss, you and your staff, if you're the boss, how much risk your company is willing to accept. So I can buy for most of these controls, I could do things on a legal pad, right? I'm very risk accepting. It's not the best way to run an organization, but it's definitely cheap, right? If I'm risk adverse, I may be a company, I'll tell you, if you are publicly traded, the larger you get, the more risk adverse your CEO is, because they realize that if you have a breach or anything of reputation risk, that's their job on the line. So the more successful and larger the company is, the less they care about spending money to protect reputation. So if everybody agrees when you have a POAM that comes up that you're risk adverse, you're likely to want to choose amongst high-end cures for whatever the problem is. And if you're risk accepting, don't even show me the Cadillac. I need the Chevy Spark that has 3 cylinders and barely makes it up the hill. But that's all I need. I just want to get through the government compliance. There is nothing wrong with being risk accepting. When you're a startup, you're risk accepting. You just want to live to fight another day. When you've gotten through that stage and you have profits to protect, you're here. What you can do, though, by defining this now is get everybody to agree. And then instead of giving them 5 proposals to fix something, you can give them just 1 or 2, which makes the whole team more efficient just by having what is typically a 15-minute to a 60-minute conversation about the pros and cons of where you are at that point in time.
But how does this risk appetite choice affect anything within this framework? Other than, because if you are, sorry, go ahead.
No, I love that you asked that question, because the truth is it doesn't affect anything at the technology level. We just left CS5 where we had 1,200 people there. And in one of the first sessions, I don't remember the speaker, they said this is really more about people and culture and having the culture of cybersecurity than about technology. And in fact,
so it's just an identification. It's just an overall identification of your organizational risk level.
Yeah, but it's the use of it that matters, that you are going to have plenty of POAMs. Typically, we have more than 100 the first time through. And when you have to figure out 100 project plans or 100 POAMs that become 10 projects, you need to not be wasting time tracking down vendors for solutions that your company's never going to accept. That's what it's really about. But it does not affect the way you do the rest of the assessment. Okay. So company description. This is where you put in your so the assessor is going to want to know, are you a big company or a small company when they get hired, and basic things like that. The NICS code comes in here. As we get to supply chain management and away from direct one company at a time management, where Prime needs to see how all of its subs are going. Eventually, it's not much of a leap where they start using it to find appropriate subcontractors. So looking for compliant people within one NICS code is reasonable. You can add as many as you want. It also helps your supplier, your Prime, get to know you. Budgets, this is really something internally. If you work with a service provider, they often want to see these fields so that they know how to interact with you. And a lot of people become much more aware of cybersecurity insurance as a result of going through this process. And I'll tell you, the people who sell cybersecurity insurance in general, I hope I'm not offending anybody on this call, they generally don't know what they're doing. So we created this form so that you could ask some of the right questions. Does my coverage include all of these things if you care about these things? And put them to work to make sure that you're getting what you want, because people get sold cybersecurity insurance, and then when they actually have a breach, they realize they didn't have the coverage they need. So we just do this to help you out in terms of management. You can then add your locations. So add as many as you want. It's not very complicated. Again, I'm not walking you through every feature. You're welcome to ask questions if you see something in here, or you can always put in a ticket. Again, don't forget the getting started and the other help tools that we have in here. Locations, think everything about CMMC is data driven. So physical locations, sure, but if you have somebody who takes their laptop, or you have a fleet of laptops that go home every day, it's not a horrible idea to say remote laptop fleet or executive laptop fleet, anything where people will understand where is the data at risk for store, process, or transmit. These 4 questions, I like to call them the 4 questions. They're part of the NIST SSP templates. They're all pretty easy to just read and answer. And we try to stay true at a basic level to the template that's published for everybody to download. So we just did one stop there. We call these subway stops up here. And these are just, I don't think we have a good name for them yet. So in the scope, we have the system overview. These are standard practices. We do have help on every one of these things. So if somebody has a question about what do you do, is it low, moderate, or high? There's plenty of reading that you can do in here. In general, an on-site, a DIDCAC assessment is going to be high, and these things are things that just I would leave them alone. They want to know the scope of the number of admins and users that you have, so they understand how to assess you. And then when we go on to contracts, one of the favorite features of our customers, whoever asked if you could have multiple cage codes, this is where you put them all in, and a description. So you have one place to visit all of them. Most of these buttons, it's just very clear, like how to fill it out. In this case, we try not to collect any more information than we need. One of them only is your highest level owner cage code. So it could be this one, it could be this one. I think that's ours actually right now. And then you can also add contracts. This is what people really like. A submarine, somebody who helps make submarines in Connecticut suggested this feature a few years ago, and everybody keeps coming back and saying that they love it. It doesn't really do anything, but it does take all those contracts that you've won, put them in one place, and one time only, you just read the contract. When does it start, end? What's the cage code that's related? And which clauses are in that contract? If you don't have any DFARS clauses, you probably don't need to do CMMC level 2. So this gives you one single source of truth about all your contracts. And for whatever reason, people win the contracts and they have their champagne or whatever they have, and they stick it in a drawer, and then they tend to have to keep going back to find them in the different drawers, electronic or otherwise. This puts everything in one place, so people tend to like it. So you can list all your contracts and cage codes here. Coming soon, you will have a contract door manager. The sister to the contract manager is the contract doors, where you can list all of your subs, and you can get a status. You can have them self-report a status of where they are in CMMC, because there is flow down in this Title 48.
Self-report, and it feeds back onto
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Now, that will be a paid feature beyond the first. We haven't decided to give you 10 or 25, but we'll give for the small contractors. We don't want to take any more money. That's hard enough for them. But as you get larger, there's a separate freestanding product to manage it called Cyber Illumination. Suffice it to say, you have enough to get going, and then it's going to be cheap, like $5 or something, or a month to add more like packs. That's probably coming out in a month or two. Data inventory, an important part of doing CUI, of doing CMMC.
Can I back up one quick question? Back
Yeah.
on that contract, are you able to put a link to say where your actual, if you have electronically stored contract, do you have a place that you can drop a link to say where that actual contract resides? I assume you're not storing the contract here.
We don't want to store FCI and CUI here. This
Exactly.
platform is the place where you describe how you do it, but not where.
Right. But if you had a link, if you had a field that just simply had a link to where it existed on your local system, that would be useful.
This is why I love doing demos, because nobody's ever suggested that before. Kind of like
Well,
that. You could embed a
description.
here.
Yeah, you can embed it in the description. Okay.
Yeah, nobody's ever asked that. I like that. Data inventory. I know I'm talking really fast. Am I doing okay by you guys? Because I showed up 10 minutes late, and now you're suffering because I'm trying to talk really fast. Is it getting absorbed at the speed that I'm speaking?
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay. Please.
We're here for an overview, and you're doing a good job.
Okay. So I'm just moving left to right, just like I suggested. Here we have the houses, which is FCI, CUI, and sensitive data. We added sensitive data because for an organization that hasn't really structurally addressed cybersecurity, there is the ability to say, okay, I have this piece of data that as a company I care about, but it's not FCI and it's not CUI, but I want to treat it as if it's FCI or CUI. So we wanted to give people a place to track that. And I actually almost gave up on the idea because I had it for like a year and a half, and I looked in the software and nobody was using it. And then all of a sudden, like in 2022 or 3, we started to see a lot of people using it because I think organizationally people were really adopting a culture of compliance, and they wanted to do it on other categories. So for the FCI, we haven't added any tools and services yet. But when you add the tools and services later, you can say which ones actually have FCI. Like endpoint protection doesn't store, process, or transmit FCI. So you can turn that off. So this gives the auditor is really there for CUI, but when you're doing your FCI self-assessment, it's good to know which tools where you're storing, processing, or transmitting data to concentrate on and which ones don't have the data. So we just give you these little switches so you can turn them on and off. It's more interesting for CUI. What we have for CUI is we have the entire NARA registry, National Archives Registry. And there are 2 types of CUI, and this isn't really the forum for me to go into the difference between basic and specified. The highest level specified CUI, if your contract tells you how to handle the CUI specifically, like for this specific kind of CUI, this is what you have to do, it's specified. If it's silent on that, it's kind of basic. And most of you are probably defense contractors, so you're going to just leave everything else blank and just go here. And if you have controlled technical information, you check the box. And if you have for basic, and if it's specified in the contracts how to handle it, you check that box. Why is there a gear, you ask? Well, later, when we get into the CTI, we know that these 2 tools are the ones that have the CTI. They don't have DoD critical infrastructure. They have this. The whole goal here with FutureFeed is get the auditor focused on what they need to review and only what they need to review. The worst thing, if you've ever been through a compliance assessment, is when you talk too much, or the guy is just, or woman is wandering around through your server or through your department, just asking questions and randomly. You want to get them like all focused where you want them focused. So the fact that specified only has a checkbox, that's not great. We would love to find a tool somewhere that has all that CTI where it's CUI specified and say, only look here, guys. Now, we can't stop them from looking other places. We've now had enough people pass with FutureFeed that we know that if you just tell them where to look, I'm not going to call them lazy, but they're unlikely to look beyond where you tell them to. So this gives you focus. Sensitive data is literally the same page. But now the assessor, if you, I was pointing at child pornography for some reason. I didn't mean to do that. But if you have operation security information and it's not CUI or FCI, but you don't want that getting out to the world, you may want to tell your team these categories that you've selected on this page are the categories where, even though it's not CUI, you want to treat it as if it's CUI and you want to keep your company's confidential information secure. Now, theoretically, we could take away NATO restricted and unclassified. For consistency, we just wanted everybody to see all the categories. We know you're not using NATO information for company confidential information, but proprietary manufacturer information, these are good categories. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we thought the National Archives does a pretty good job of creating all of them. If you do want to have your own categories, you can create them down here, and it's very intuitive. For settings, if you have a ticketing system that has an address, like we have support at futurefeed.co, type it in there and enable it. And then there are some opportunities when you define POAMs where you can send a POAM by email to your ticketing system. And if you want to see the samples of them, you can click on these buttons and you can see the sample email. POAM goals, we know this takes a long time. So if we can save you a click or two when you find a POAM and you want to create a due date, it takes time to look at a calendar and pick a date and go through all that. If on your first pass, you might just be thinking to yourself, I just want to get all the POAMs done in 6 months. So you set the default date for 2 quarters from now. And then every time you find a POAM that needs to be created, it'll automatically say 2 quarters from now. So it's maybe we saved you 2 or 3 clicks, but when you're doing 320 objectives and 110 controls, I'm telling you, it adds up. Like, so we try to think about that, and we made it so you can set it here in the settings. The other thing is, you have all of you.
So can you hear me? I'm not sure if my microphone.
Now I can hear you. When you started saying, "Can you hear me?"
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
To determine when is 800.171 R3 and also 800.172 controls going to be added? Because these ones seem to be 800.171 R2.
So R3 is at least a year away, according to the government. We are going to be adding it sometime between now and the end of the year. We actually have them all loaded in here. I don't know if it's loaded in this one. But R3 has something called ODPs in it, organizationally defined parameters. And we're on our 3rd iteration of making them very nice and easy to consume. And so just when we were about to release it, the DoD created a memo that basically presets the values for many of the controls. Luckily, we hadn't released yet because it would have created a migration, all kinds of challenges. So we are consuming that memo and making it so that R3 is a wonderful experience out of the box. And I would say we're 80 to 90% done. We're not quite at testing yet, but we're in the last refinement stage. We also do 853, which has ODPs and some other ones. So it's all kind of coming together. So we'll have it by the end of the year. You won't need it for at least another year. Okay?
And when I move to 171 R3, will you guys help with the migration from the existing controls? So that if it's built out for 172 or 171 R2, that you'll migrate where appropriate?
So see this button, copy framework? What you're going to do is you're going to have your source framework being R2 and your target being R3, and you're going to press the button, copy. And what it's going to do is it's going to copy all the evidence between the matching controls from one to the other. There are some controls that are unique in R3. The words are different on the controls, like a little bit different. So we don't actually copy the answers to the met or not met at the objective level, but we do copy all the relevant evidence. And then you look at the evidence and then you make your own final decision on the control for R3. And as we're starting to deliver AI, we may change that policy and we may actually tell you the recommended answer or something like that. We just want to be careful that we're not like a comma can change everything in this business. So we don't want to make the final decision, but 80%, 90% of the work is getting the evidence right. And that's all to be done with that copy framework button.
That's cool.
By the way, if you look at another tool, you're here because you already picked this one, but if you look at another one, they're like, oh, you press one button, it's all automatic and you're done. That's not true. Like you're deceptively done and you're going to pay a price for that. So we try to be reasonable in what we produce for you. We want to do everything for you, but sometimes it's not the right thing to do. This organizational scale button, to make things fast, we use icons in various places and every organization is different. $1 sign for one of you may be $10,000, but for me might be $1,000 and this might be $5,000. But if I see $2 signs associated with a poem or a task or something in a project, me and my peer in my same company should be able to know what we're talking about. Something around $5,000, not around $1,000, not around 120,000, right? So see this thing? It's a scale, like a measuring tape is a scale. So you set these values here and wherever you are in the application, because it's in the header, you can pop that up and you can go, okay, $1,000 is $1 sign. By the way, it doesn't really take until you refresh the screen, but $1,000 is $1 sign. And then if I'm down in some control or I'm doing a POAM, everybody knows that $1 sign means this is not a big deal project. It's less than $1,000. Maybe I set this value to $100. The point is every organization is different. You should set yourself up to whatever your cultural norms are, wherever you are. Okay, and then framework. If that FedRAMP warning gets annoying and you don't really care, like legally we have to show the warning, but if you choose to disable it, it's your call. This is where you can turn it off. All right, any questions about that?
Looks good.
Setup? All right. I'm supposed to get you through documents, so I'm really going to start talking even faster. So when we get to people, it's a matter of adding users. And what you can do is so a big pet peeve of mine is people forget to remove like contractors and employees after they leave. So I recommend you set an expiration date for people, and then the account just goes dormant after, in this case, 30 days. So it's a really good cybersecurity thing to do. You can identify people as working for you or as a third party. The main thing is on access. No access is the one I like to call attention to. You're going to have people who you do not want logging into FutureFeed, yet you want to be able to refer to them in the controls.
On the topic of different users,
Yes.
are you able to create a role that's like a read-only role that you might give an assessor so they can't monkey things up?
That's this role, assessor, as it turns out. That's the role. So so the answer is yes. I should have just said yes. No access means
Thank you.
we know that the human being exists in the organization, but they can't log in, but we can refer to them. Standard is read-write access. Admin is the ability to add and remove users like I'm doing here. And assessor is sort of that read-only role. When the assessor logs in, I'm not going to have time to show it to you, but when the assessor logs in, they will only see the system security plan and look at the evidence and navigate from there. At this last conference, we got some feedback about that mode, and we're going to probably be making some slight alterations, but a lot of the C3POs are using that, and that's where some of that efficiency is coming from.
So you defined that the standard user is read-write. So your choices are either you can't get in at all, you have read-write, or you're an admin, which obviously can change settings, or you're an assessor, but you don't have a standard user read-only, right? Is that correct?
It's probably our #1 request. And given what we have like on our plate between now and the end of the year, it's likely to be a 2026 thing because it touches every single screen. So this is what we have for now.
Okay.
For roles, so it's not a great idea to manage the people by like, you don't want to manage Mark Berman. You want to manage the role that I have in the organization. So we give you a few default roles, and then you can add as many roles as you want. And if Mark Berman is accountable for the SSP, then, well, I made it Jason. It doesn't matter who it is. The point is that if somebody wants, if an auditor wants to know who's in charge of the SSP because they have questions, it's Jason. An advantage of this is that if Chase Berman leaves the company and I want to reassign the CIO role to Carlos Banks, every task assigned, every poem assigned, every RACI assigned just got changed from Chase to Carlos. So it's a huge time saver. And frankly, I wish a lot of other software had the ability to like switch roles back and forth as easily. This default accountable role is also super valuable. And even though it's like it's hiding in plain sight, a lot of people kind of overlook it. I'm open to suggestions to how to make it more obvious. I've struggled with it. But here you can say that the default for everything new that's created, every time you create a new poem, a new task, a new anything, the default is going to be this guy, Jason, who's accountable for the SSP. And then I can apply it to all the existing ones that are blank and any new ones that come thereafter. So this
Then it should follow. Then it should follow your design left to right and be the first leftmost object.
as it should get a higher ranking, like be up here somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And be the first leftmost object.
Maybe so. Well, you have to define the user. You have to define the user. It would be number 3.
Well, then whatever in the line. Yeah,
I like it. If we elevate it, then it would not be missed.
right.
Not everybody uses the default accountable role. If you have a team of 4 or 5 peers, there's really no one person who should, like, you want people to intentionally pick one. Those people skip it. So it's not a requirement, but it is a good thing to do in many cases. And then teams can be listed here. You can add a new team. We have created a bunch of teams that are already tied. Here's the key here. See how this one says 11 controls? So if I pick the IT leadership team and I create it on these controls, which we've read the CMMC level 2, the auditor is supposed to talk to people in IT leadership on these 11 controls. So what you do is you check the box, which somebody already did here, and create the team. And then when you're in the IT leadership team, all you got to do is populate it, and you can populate it. Whoops, that's changing the description. You can populate it with either people or, better, as you might predict, with roles. So now if that incident team lead or this guy Carlos leaves and it's somebody else, the new guy is the new chief information officer. He's already on the team, and that team, you got to follow my logic here, is already on all of those controls that I just said, the 11 controls. So there's like a ton of baked in the cake automation. And please note how much of this is about people. It really is a lot of people stuff in CMMC compliance. Any questions about that?
So far, so good.
Good, because I got to get you through documents. All right. Tools and services. Every screen that's like this, there's tools that are at the top. There's usually a second table, which are poemed things that aren't in place yet, but you've identified to put in place. And then archived ones, which we usually compress at the bottom in case you want to restore something like a recycle bin. To populate your tools, you just hit the plus and you put in the mission. This is really critical because not everybody's heard of the tool that you use. So explain in just a few words, what is it there for? And then tell us the brand or the model or whatever. And then people asked for this last year, and I love it. So you can decide that, here, we'll open one of them. I don't know what Cloud Eyes is, whatever the heck it is. Oh, it's a SIM tool. Great. So I can say whether it's a cloud tool or it's a on-prem tool in that other screen. This screen, I'm gonna, because we're running out of time, I'm gonna have to ask you to explore a little bit yourself, but I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things it applies to tools and documents. You can connect the tool to as many controls as you need to. So this is your ecosystem here. You have your working documents, the policies that are supported by plans and procedures. And this is here as a teaching aid for you to use with your peers at your companies. These are the reference documents. And these are also referenced like audits and assessments, but this is how you operate your company. So we have this SIM tool. And if I want to connect the SIM tool to a bunch of controls, let me remove all. It's really pretty simple. I type in logging because I'm just going to type in log. And any control that mentions log in the title is here. But that I know there's more controls than just the ones that mention the title. So I can broaden my search to the descriptions, to the titles of the objectives, or even to the guidance about the controls. And as a rule of thumb, I like to say about 10 or 12 is maybe even 15 is the right number of controls to attach something to. If you attach this tool to 100 controls, you're just annoying the heck out of the auditor who's like, all right, I know already that CloudWise Overwatch is your tool. And because I've seen it 99 other times, and I don't care about annoying the auditor that much. I do care about that it slows them down to see longer lists of things that they already know are there. If they want to ask you a question about CloudEyes, by the 50th tool, they're going to ask you the question. You don't have to keep putting it in their face. Leaders and followers, generally, tools don't exist on their own. They exist because there's a policy that requires them. So my leader for my tool might be something, let's look at policies and say that we have a security policy. So I'm just typing in a keyword to find it. So this was a SIM tool, right? It's probably referred to in the system, whatever that.
But don't those policies have to exist in the first place?
Yeah, so there's an order of things. You make the tools first, but you get the same leaders and followers when you're at the document. So CloudEyes would be a follower of the policy, system and network security. So if you do the tool first, I wouldn't do any leaders and followers. But when you get to doing the policies, you get to the connect screen, and instead of having to do the keyword search, this thing that I put in here, you can skip that and you can just say, okay, the leader is this network and system policy, and it's already connected to 19 controls. So I don't have to do anything special for CloudEyes. It's just going to be listed on all the controls where the system and network security policy is. So it gets really fast. The tagging, do all of this managed tags when you define a policy document, and then make the other things, procedures and tools and things like that.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Make them follow the policy. And then you're going to get through everything much faster.
But once it's done, if you go back to CloudWise, in this case, you would see those connections
Yes.
that were previously defined. Right.
So if I go to my system and network policy that wasn't connected here, and I go to its Connect tab, I'm going to see CloudEyes Overwatch as a follower.
Right.
That's how it got to all those controls. You guys are getting it. Like, I can't believe you're... Okay, 2:01. Does anybody have to drop, or can I talk for 5 more minutes?
You can keep going. For me.
Yep, got 15 more minutes.
15, that's generous. Okay, my email address is mberman at, I'll type it here. My personal email address is this. If I don't get to something because I was so rushed, please just reach out to me and I'll answer your question. The best address to really have questions answered is this one, support@futurefeed.co. Everything, you get a team approach to that, and I'm the CEO. I get a little bit distracted. So I would recommend support, but I don't want to cut you off. Like, we're building a relationship here. If you have questions for me, let me know. Okay, so we have our tools. We've said that this CloudWise Overwatch is not a cloud tool. It's not an on-prem tool. It's now, I just made it an online tool, so it's a cloud tool. I have a couple of different views of this. So the evidence status, the management of the tool, like who manages the tool, do we have DLP turned on? Is the data backed up? All of this can be stored in here. And the particular data inventory, remember we did the data inventory? If this is one of those CUI tools that is CUI specified, I can pop up that same screen and say my specified CUI lives in whatever this made up tool is, CloudEyes Max Protect. So all of these screens are really helpful to you to define your environment. If this tool comes from a vendor who has a SOC 2, I can mark it SOC 2 or ISO, whatever I want to, whatever they are. So I wouldn't say this is a super robust vendor management system. But when you talk about the key things that you manage with vendors that are related to cybersecurity, if you don't have the bandwidth or the money to get one of like a full-on vendor management, you can get a lot done in here. Any questions about tools? And I'll move on to the next screen if there aren't.
Nope.
Specific assets. So I don't love this screen, but a lot of people ask for it. What you don't want to do is try to manage your entire inventory of everything with a plug in here. You're creating, so noise to signal is really important with compliance. There are, however, some groups. So I told you could put executive team laptops as a location. You could also make a group of executive team laptops. And when you make the group of them, you can describe here what's going on, how are they used, answer the questions in advance that the auditor might have. You can connect this to certain controls using the same keyword search, or connect it to your remote policy or whatever you're going to do. That's how I would do it. I'm going to switch to the third tab. These are all those fields, not in table form, but all the compliance related things. What kind of asset is that tool? Is it, these are the official categories, and we reproduced the screen that the cyber, I think DOW produced, but you have everything in a nice reference chart when you're trying to decide what type of asset. This is a requirement. You need to, for every tool or service, you got to categorize it. The most in scope and the most relevant are CUI assets, and out of scope assets, you're basically in your description back over here in the overview view, you will probably say why it's out of scope. And then some of these fields here are more management-y, if that's a word. It's not a word. But if you're going to make a list of all the stuff you own and have it in one place, you really should define things like a life cycle and a budget and how compliant or not compliant. And maybe you're not talking about CUI every day, and sometimes you're talking about PII or PHI, health information. So you can track all that at the tool level here, and it becomes a really great management tool. And I think people in general hate the burden of compliance, but if it gives you the ability to manage your company better because you feel more organized, you start to use this excuse of compliance to be an elevated level of organization and management. So I'm going to skip these last two tabs, and I'll pick up on those on the document side. So vulnerabilities, we're going to skip today. I'll just show it to you briefly. You can keep a scoreboard and you can upload scans, and it will track for you. It'll keep score, if you will, on how many vulnerabilities you have. And typically teams will ignore.
These are CV. Are you talking about CVEs, right?
Yeah. So if you run Nessus or something, you can just drag it in here. And what happens is, again, it's the human side. The admins want to get credit for getting rid of vulnerabilities, but then they have a really hard one and they just keep kicking that can forward 1 month to the next month to the next year. And as a manager, you don't want that. So we track the average age and the oldest one in each of the categories. And you can see it down below. Kind of not strictly compliance, but useful. Vendors, you can put all your vendors in here and you can relate your vendors to the tools and services. And then budget, if you do choose to enter the fields for each of those tools and services for, let me go to the detail screen. We track 4 things: technology, support. So usually you buy a license, and then roughly 20% of that is an annual support contract. And then you have internal labor and external labor. You can track that across all your tools and services. And if you're a person who's never really had a formal IT budget, you're not really capturing your admin meetings and things like that, but you're capturing 80, 90% of your budget. And your CEO will often appreciate that you're getting more and more organized and you're predictive. And also you can sort on here. So I can sort by annual cost. My most expensive thing is this thing, and my second most is that thing. So this is just high-level planning tool, and it's often very useful to people. But again, not required for compliance. Let me be clear. Documents. Documents works just like tools, except we have a populate button, just like we had for Teams. In the populate button, you have templates that we provide. We're getting more and more vendors who are asking to add templates for sale to this, so you can do that. You basically look through the list, and just like with the Teams, if I don't have an anti-phishing policy and I want one, I know that that's related to those two controls. So if I copy that, see that copy, and then I create it, I now have an anti-phishing policy, which is a draft document that when I go into my policies here, I'm sure we're going to find anti-phishing maybe at the bottom. Sometimes it takes a minute to, oh, there it is. It's a draft policy, anti-phishing. Now, this may not be perfect for your organization, but it's a great starting point to have this and then just edit it and customize it for your organization. And here's the draft document. So documents, when this becomes official and approved, you just mark it approved. And while I can't show you every feature in one hour training, like that status change, I just approved it at 2:09 p.m. So we do have a lot of logging that is not like you get lost in the logs, but more like, oh, I care about who approved that policy. I can find it right away. So the whole noise to signal thing plays throughout our strategy here. So you have populate, you put in all your policies and procedures, the tagging and everything that we were talking about earlier, it just works the same as it does in tools. There's not much to talk about. You're going to tag your policies, and if you have a tool that you want to follow to all the places where the policy is, I can select the tool, and now that tool is going to have this group of controls. It's going to be on all the same controls. Okay. I probably should breathe at some point. So I want to go a little deeper on this before we conclude. RACI is everywhere, like I said, in the software, because we want to set up for a clean, fast assessment. So I need to know whether I'm an auditor or whether I'm the newest guy that you hired. I need to know who's in charge of this policy. That's the A. If I want to see who's the R, I can put teams in here, or I can put individuals in here. These 5 people are responsible, and I can manipulate them. I think it's pretty intuitive. Like, we've been at this for a while. That's not an area that we get questions. If you don't want to edit the text and manage the text of the document in here, you can upload a document right here, and then you just find it on your computer and you can upload it. If you want to put a link to a document, put the link in here, and you can put your link in here and then just leave the live document, the attachments alone. Let's talk strategically about linked documents for a second. Links break. They just do. So if you work really hard on your assessment, which typically takes from 6 to 18 months, and you put a bunch of links in here and you choose not to copy your document in or your live document, and somebody the day before the assessment rearranges your file server, you're going to be screwed. And that's not fun. The most popular way to store documents for people with FutureFeed is to paste the document itself in here, to open the editor and paste it in. It's an online editor. It's not as good as Word. We just upgraded it actually today. It's a very full-featured editor, but it's not Word. So my estimate is 10 minutes to clean up the formatting whenever you paste in here. And that's what people have been using. If you want to switch templates on an existing one, you want to switch to a different template, instead of phishing, you want to do some other one, you can pick another one and you can apply it. For service providers, they have a way to, oh, I skip something. There is a history. So every time you make a change to the document, when you save and publish it, it tells you who did it, and you can restore an older version if you screwed it up. The last thing I want to talk about today is evidence. So you do need evidence that you're following the access control policy. If you want to add evidence, you can add it on the fly on the evidence tab. You just hit add evidence, and you can create a new document. What's a new document? It's a new document. It just opens up the editor, and say we're in this meeting and one of you wanted evidence that you came to the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, come into FutureFeed, go to the policy or procedure or tool, wherever you want the evidence, hit the new document, and boom, give it a title and then just start typing. And that's your evidence that you did something. For example, a change management meeting that you say you do every month, just open it up and type live that you're having your change management meeting. Will the assessor look at every change management meeting record you ever had? No. What are they going to do? They're going to look at the pattern of compliance. They're going to open one to make sure, and they're going to use that as a proxy. That's what you're trying to beat in the system. If you want to do task assignments, you can do very similar. Assign a new task. So the task is related to the access control policy. And I can give the task being the user review. And I can set that to be monthly. And I can assign it to, instead of Marshall, who was the guy we were picking on earlier? Was it a Jason or something? Or
Jason, Jason.
We'll assign it to me. And then I submit it, and I'm going to get, we don't want to pound people with too many, especially when you're first doing the assessment, you would get like 100 of these alerts in one day. So we aggregate them into one alert at the end of the day for all the things that you got that day. And then I'm going to show you one last feature here that is sort of interconnected. Where's my mouse? Up here, you can set your preferences for notifications. This is in my way.
My preference.
My preferences. And then how often do you want to receive new assignments? Never or daily. So, but that just means one assignment a day, or due and overdue tasks. And you can set that. This is actually the setting I like to get them on Mondays. These things that I showed you about the evidence to bring everything back together, go back to the dashboard. And we have here with the team or the individual responsibilities, the tasks. The tasks are related to that ongoing evidence. The POAMs, remember, it's the one-time thing. So at 2:15 now, let me just summarize what we've done. We went over the dashboards. We did all the setup. We did the people, the 3 lists, people, tools, and documents. You are set up now when you've done those lists to come in here and start doing the controls, which you can look at this on your own. You all have subscriptions. There's a little more help on the controls. We got videos, but you're going to go through it. But what happened when we tag the controls is when you get to the interview, if you had on that access policy, the RACI defined, you can also define it on the controls, and that's done for you here. The examine part of the audit, all those tags that we did, remember that access control policy? It was tied to 3.11. So the very first time I see the control, because I did that tagging, I'm going to have a list of a bunch of stuff that is likely related to the control. Look, it was a blunt instrument, tagging the policy and using the keyword and all that. But what if I screwed up and the clean desk policy is in access control? One click and it's gone. The email policy doesn't belong in access control, it's gone. Maybe I missed something in terms of reference document lists. I want to add some other list that I have, like this one. It's like 2 clicks and you're done. So by doing the people, tools, and documents, you have a management tool, but you also have a speedy way to just review 3.11. And the testing is the tools. So these are the tools, these are the documents, and these are the people. And we have basically made a picture for the assessor of 3.11. That's why FutureFeed works quickly. Come back for training 2. We will walk through this screen. We'll walk through the SSP. Your FutureFeed is how you take lots of little tiny poems and turn them into projects. The deliverables are how you get reports out of it. And then you'll be ready to go in the wild. Any questions?
Mark, quick
Nope.
question. In regards to the apologies, Wayne. In regards to the documents, populate. When you create a draft document through a draft policy list, for instance, access control policy, is it being done based on CMMC keywords? The question, to put more context, recently we went through an assessment. Very painful, but we passed the assessment. But the issue that I had is I had assessors that are looking for particular keywords on the documents themselves. And if those keywords weren't there, that was basically a hit. And I had done pre-assessments with C3PAOs, and that were marked as clear, but when I went to the assessment with a different assessor, it was based on their point of view.
This is a very immature industry. And I'm saying this as somebody who served on the Cyber AV board in the first couple of years. It is not yet consistent from what one lead assessor or assessor is going to ask for versus another. From where I sit with the tool part of it, we're adding AI to this over the next 6 months. There is some randomness when you have an immature industry where there is not a norm yet. There's not like that guy that was looking for keywords. If that's not normal, he doesn't know that's not normal. It's just what he got used to doing. And so we can't know that. These policies and the FutureFeed strategy, I think, is the better way to answer this question. We use well-accepted nonprofits, which we cite in our policies when we have. So this one came from the New York consumer small business area. We found the best access control policy we could find, and we give it to you because you need an access control policy to manage your business. There is a level of knowledge that is either customizing it for your business, and we actually look to make sure it was customized for CMMC. So that's part of, we have a director of education, Amy Williams. We evaluate it, but there isn't one access control policy for the whole world. These are great starter policies, but they're not finisher policies because they don't know anything about your company and your preferences. So the best I can answer that is we've done the best we can with these, and we continually try to improve them. And if you have a service provider, the service provider, like somebody asked me about Prevail, a company earlier, they have their own packet of documents that are related to how their tools are used, and those templates would appear here if this was a Prevail customer. So I don't know if that answers everything in the way you wanted to, but that's kind of the reality. Is there is not one. If there was one, there would be, every company would be the same. But the truth is manufacturers are different from service providers, which are different, and people are different too. So we've done the best we can to find the common ground that you can build from without starting from scratch.
Understood. Thank you. Good starting point. Make it your own
Yes.
organization.
And soon on the assess.
Experience.
Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
I was just saying, thank you so much. It was just a painful experience having to go through it. And it's one of those where it's good for some, but it wasn't good for the actual person
Yeah.
that was doing the assessment.
And we take feedback like all the time, and we're constantly improving.
So
This
recording
NAS,
be available?
the what?
And if so, can you give us a URL?
For what? I missed the beginning.
I think he was asking
The
if
recording of this session, I saw that the session was recorded.
Yes.
So I'm just curious.
I believe after the session ends, it's automatically emailed out, because I normally don't do these sessions. I'm covering for a person who does the training, but I think the whole thing
thank you.
is automated at this point. There is another feature I'll just highlight very soon, the summary notes, which is kind of meant to be the summary on all this kind of evidence to point them in the right direction. We're going to start with some default summary notes that you have, again, a basic starting point. Anytime you see text that you didn't write in here, it's not meant to be the be all end all of answers. It's meant to be a starting point. And you'll find that throughout. Like we try not to leave anything blank, but we obviously don't know your company. So you gotta own it at the end of the day. All right. Any other questions?
last one, because you brought up Prevail. So if a client is using Prevail and they have do you already have Prevail's templates?
Yes.
Or you do? Okay, cool.
So there unfortunately there's a process for that. So put in a ticket to support at futurefeed.co and say that you want to have access to the Prevail templates. There's no charge, but because of Prevail's requirements, we have to ask them, are you really a customer? And when they approve it, then we make them live. So it
No,
usually
that's fair. I just
24 hours.
if my clients are Prevail, I need to, that's
Yes.
cool that I can do that. All right.
Yes. And if you are, so it sounds like you're a service provider. If you want to write your own documents and you want to push them to all of your clients, say that Prevail and we do not have the right policy in your mind, and you want to just write it once and be done with it, we have a feature called the library feature, which is not part of this training, but you can make a library of your own documents, and you can control all or some of your clients that get that. So it puts you in the driver's seat with your clients, because who wants to do it? If you have 20 clients, do you really want to write the same policy 20 times? No, you write it once, put it in library, and then push it to the clients.
Right. That's cool. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, my last time I'll apologize, but I apologize again for being late. It's not my normal routine. Thank you for putting up with me and I hope you enjoy FutureFeed and come back for training too with me or somebody else.
Perfect, man. Thank you very much.
All
All
right.
right, thank you for your time here, and then also CS5. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.